And so, dear friends, it's just lovely to gather with you all. Old friends and new friends, it's lovely. And tonight, I wanted to share or just reflect on resilience again and the gift of these times. And I'd like to offer some seasonal stories or connections with traditions which have seasonal stories at this time of year, Indigenous traditions, Celtic, Christian, and Buddhist traditions, which I have a special feel for, and also the gifts of this COVID time, which for some of us is a time of inner hibernation. And for others, like the healthcare workers and others, is also a time of huge and courageous outer action. And also for some, especially I think those who live alone. I've been talking with folks who live on their own these days, and there's a particular challenge for folks in this time. I think folks who live on their own are called both to the inner hibernation and also the outer courage. And for all of us, of course, called to very deep practice right now. And so how can the traditions that are offering days of remembrance, days of kind of recognition at this time of year support us? And so the first day of celebration I want to bring in is December 8th, which is relatively close, and it's Bodhi Day in the Buddhist tradition, celebrating the Buddha's enlightenment. And when I think of meditation, of course, our practice, it's like a day of going inside, or a practice of going inside on an inner journey, a journey of clear seeing, of clarity. And for me, this is connected, very connected to Indigenous teachings of this time of winter, this time of hibernation. And Brenda Rivers, an Akwesasne elder, says this: if we do like the bear does and hibernate, go inside of ourselves, we can find the courage to be honest with ourselves. And so the bear is also going inward on this hibernation journey, this time of rest and renewal that some of us are on. But also the bear, which has this courageous kind of very strong energy, protective energy, the mother bear energy that many of the healthcare workers, I feel, are manifesting right now. And so just to recognize both of those in this story of hibernation, the story of the bear. And so I'm going to lead a guided meditation with this in mind, that this guided meditation will lead us inside, as we always do in our practice, going inside on this journey, this inner journey of awareness and discovery. So let's go inside and see what gifts we can discover, what gifts and understandings we can find. And so settling into a sense of the body sitting. Sensing the body as a whole, sitting from head to toe. And already, as we simply rest into this body, already we can sense the gift of mindfulness, this gift of awareness, this gift of being present here. And sensing the physical sensations in the body which let us know that we're here, we're present now. the feet on the floor. Hips settled. Sensing the back of the spine upright yet relaxed. The back of the head as if a string is drawing it up so that the chin tucks a little bit, so there's a nice long spine but not tight or stiff. Supporting these inner gifts of uprightness, alertness, yet relaxation in the body and in the mind. We can turn to the gift, this unbelievable gift of inquiry, being able to discover and explore, and we can ask ourselves just, how is it now in the body? Is there a tiredness or a tightness or kind of awakeness? Sensations of comfort, sensations of discomfort. We can hold it all with the gift of kindness, gift of gentleness, the gift of friendliness. This gift of connecting softly with how it is now. Connecting with our body and our heart and our mind. Just as we are. Sensing the body as it's sitting, and then sensing into the breath in the body as it moves in the lungs, in the belly. The sides and the back of the body. The shoulders rising and falling a little bit. And just resting back and letting the breath breathe all by itself. This gift of resting back, this gift of ease. Whatever ease is available as we allow this ebb and flow of the breath. And noticing with gentleness the ebb and flow of the thoughts as well. The mind will think, daydream, plan, and then it'll come back all by itself. And then we can notice this gift of choice, this gift of to gently choose to come back to the anchor of the body and the breath, if even just for a half a breath. This capacity to work wisely with thoughts. And just on your own now, resting in the body and the breath. And the sense of gratitude, if it rises, for all the gifts of this practice. Just with a little gentle inquiry, asking in to see if there's any place of stillness anywhere in your system right now, any place of calmness. Might be a little bit somewhere in the body, somewhere in the heart, the mind. And just this is a little gift. And being able to notice it is a little gift. This calmness may be there for you, maybe not. There may be other gifts that have been with you in this meditation. The gift of mindfulness, of kindness and softness, gift of connecting with yourself, gift of choice. See, we have a choice about how we meet experience. And we can tune into the gift of intention now. Just making a gentle intention to stay connected to the body and the breath. And sense any, as we open our eyes in a moment, and sensing any sense of appreciation or gratitude arising for the gifts of this time. Knowing gratitude itself is a gift. And so opening your eyes and staying present as best you can for a moment or two in the body and the breath as you open your eyes. Letting yourself take in the community. Feel any sense of appreciation for the community. It's the simple sense of being here together. And what a support that is. Hello to those folks who've joined. Just enjoying the community for a moment while we reflect on the 3 refuges, which we often do at the beginning, and I forgot to. Well, we'll do them now. We'll just take them now. Refuge of the Buddha. And I was thinking into this, there's gifts everywhere. Everywhere you look, there's gifts. The gift of the refuge of the Buddha. The remembrance that understanding and peace is in our own heart, not outside ourselves. And the gift of the teachings, that we have this path. It's kind of amazing. We've got this path. And the gift of the community, how it can support us. So welcome, everyone. Welcome. And so I'm going to carry on with this talk about the gifts of the stories that feel connected to this time of year for me, and how these stories can connect us to the inner gifts of meditation. And the next tradition or story I'd like to bring in is the tradition of my Celtic root, which is in the Orkney Islands of Scotland, and they like to practice or celebrate solstice there a lot for thousands of years. And so solstice, I love this quote from Andréana Lefton in an article called The Gifts of Hibernation. She really, for me, connects the solstice with our practice here. And the gift of the present moment. And she's going to talk about solstice, and then she's got a few weeks of transition time around solstice in her life, but we all do, don't we, right now? We're all in kind of a liminal moment, a transition moment between times. So she says this: the sun goes to sleep early, and so do I. I have a few weeks between ending one life cycle and the beginning of another. And so I burrow into the present moment until I touch the bright well of timelessness. I love that sense that we can touch the timeless dimension in our meditation, this infinite now. Adyashanti talks a lot about this. That we touch into that place where time isn't really relevant, is it? It's this now, this moment. And the sun going to sleep early is the solstice. I learned today that solstice is made of two Latin words, sol, which means sun, and sistere, which means to make stand. And so this is referring to the sun, which appears to stand still as the earth moves on its tilted axis away from the sun, which is the solstice. It's at its maximum distance away from the sun. And then as it turns, it seems the sun kind of seems to stand still because the earth is turning, but not moving so much towards or away from the sun. And so the sun seems to stand still for 2 or 3 days right at solstice. And so that's the meaning of solstice. And this standing still with the whole planetary system feels very significant to me in terms of connecting to our practice. We can sense this standing stillness in our own practice. And so here's a beautiful quote from Katherine Savage. It's 3 short paragraphs from an article called Standing Still in the Abundant Pause. On a day when the sun stands still, we have an opportunity to make our movements small and our meaning big. Rather than make elaborate metaphors of how we plan to shift our lives with the returning availability of light, we can just be with the sun in its day of pause. We can make this day an elegy to cosmic humility, where everything that is belongs. On the day the sun stands still, we can be the pause between breaths. That moment of silence and stillness where there is no form and no certainty of another one coming. We can relinquish all our predictions, our predilections, our absolutes of what the next moment should have in it. On the day the sun stands still, all extremes can be paused. We can trust that one edge of the universe has begun its reversal to reveal that which we cannot see yet. Not yet. Today, our choice-making minds, perpetually in the act of deciding, continue or not continue, join or not join, have or have not, can be silent. Today there is no promise and no fear. There are no rewards and judgments. There is only this. So solstice for us is Monday, the 21st. I invite us all to just sense into the standing stillness with the whole solar system for a moment. And so a third story or a third tradition that I grew up with, and that is actually very precious to me. I grew up in the Anglican Church, and I don't share often about this, but one of the stories I loved from that time was the Nativity story. And so I want to share the Nativity story, partly because this is my, and I have to big qualifier, because I I know there's people here who know the nativity story much better than I do. And this is my personal interpretation. I don't want you to take it sacrilegious in any way. It's deeply meaningful for me. But of course, it connects the nativity story to the Buddhist practice of the inner Buddha nature. And so there's a lot of different ways of telling the story, many aspects. And for me, it's the story of the shepherds following a sacred star to the birthplace of Jesus, to a special birth. And Jesus, of course, is considered by many Buddhists to be a very important major bodhisattva in the world. A bodhisattva in the Buddhist tradition are those whose mission it is to alleviate suffering and teach peace and compassion. Thich Nhat Hanh has a picture in his dining room at Plum Village of Jesus and the Buddha together. And he's written a book called Living Buddha, Living Christ. A beautiful book. And so for me, this story, the star that the shepherds follow, is that knowing in us, there's something important here. There's something life-giving here. There's something I need to follow here. Many of us may have followed some kind of knowing into the practice, into this meditation practice, not knowing where it was going. The shepherds didn't know where they were going, but they knew, we're going to follow this star. And so following this knowing in ourselves, the shepherds are the part of ourselves that follow with faith and confidence, even when we don't know where we're going. And what they found, of course, is the stable where Mary and Joseph were and the newborn baby. And for me, Mary, of course, and this isn't just me, but the world, Mary can represent compassion, Joseph can represent wisdom, of course, the two wings of our practice. And when wisdom and compassion come together, these are some of the conditions for our understanding of the rise of a spiritual understanding. So wisdom and compassion can come together, but when wisdom and compassion come together in this nativity story, there's no room at the inn. And of course there's no room at the inn, because spiritual birth it's very helpful to have the conditions of quiet and stability, if we could say that. There's no room at the inn. We know when we're busy, our mind is full, and we're racing, and it's hard to calm and still and allow the spiritual birth to happen in ourselves. And so of course there's no room at the inn. Of course they have to go to the stable where it's quiet, where they're close to nature, close to the earth. And that's the condition, one of the conditions for the spiritual birth. And then the gifts of the practice are known at that time, but also gifts come later with the wise people who come days later with gifts to celebrate this birth. And we know in my own kind of spiritual birth, when I have a spiritual understanding, sometimes it's pleasant, sometimes it's not, and sometimes the gifts aren't known until sometime later. And so I always think of that when I think of this story, the gifts that come down the road. And this, I want to share with you, this story was so important to me. This little nutshell story, so important to me that I went in search of a very special, this was about 15 years ago, I went in search of a very special nativity scene. And I found it here. So this it's a little gourd. I got it at 10,000 Villages when we had 10,000 villages here. And I got it because it reminds me that this story, this nativity story, is in my own heart. And it reminds me of that because inside is the nativity scene. And over here is wisdom and compassion, and the shepherds and the animals and the spiritual birth of Jesus. And then over here are all the people that are bringing gifts, all the townspeople and the wise people. And I put this out every every year because it reminds me that this is in my very own heart. And so I wanted to share that with you tonight. Thank you for letting me share that with you. And so, friends, the gifts of the spiritual practice, we've shared many of them tonight in this talk. The gifts of mindfulness, kindness, choice, compassion, wisdom, connection, stillness, intention, honesty, clarity, simplicity, connection to nature, intuition, faith, confidence, strength. So many inner gifts. And we may, in the Buddhist tradition, we can understand these are often referred to as our inner treasure, the priceless inner treasure that's in our own hearts. And we may cherish some of these gifts. Each of us may have different ones of these that we cherish. And we may, cherish them from this time of the year, from the hibernation stories, from the solstice stories, from the nativity story, the Christian story, the Buddhist story of enlightenment, and also this time of year with all these stories, but also this time of our lives in this time of COVID. There are some gifts from this time of COVID. Some we may know now, some we may know later. I've read worldwide of people that are rediscovering their priorities in life. Rediscovering the value, the gifts of slowing down. Rediscovering the gifts of community. But as I think into this or feel into this, I'm also aware that as we move back into post-COVID world, as we move past this time of year, we may forget these gifts. And it's human nature. They'll fade. And I just want to name that, because without naming it, it can go more unnoticed. And it's important for me to name that in my own self even, that the intensity or vividness of these gifts can fade, will fade. And so I want to remind myself and remind us all of the importance of ceremony, ritual, days of remembrance, like the quarterly days of remembering when the sun stands still. Actually, I guess it's twice a year when the sun stands still with the solstices, winter and summer. Those ceremonies, those remembrances, the weekly remembrances that many traditions have of a Sabbath. The daily remembrances our tradition can have with our daily meditation of, settling into our inner stillness, our inner understanding, our inner nature, that daily remembrance, that daily ceremony. I want to remember the importance of these daily ceremonies, these times of remembrance, so that when we emerge from this hibernation, from this kind of time of cosmic pause of the solstice, this time of COVID, this COVID pause, that we have more capacity, more chance, more opportunity to remember these teachings. Wouldn't it be wonderful? As we kind of may be tempted to race back into our lives, into into the pace of life that we've had in the past. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we didn't leave these gifts behind? And so I want to read a poem that speaks to me about this. And this is a poem that was written by a good friend of mine and a friend of our Sanghas who comes some Wednesday nights and has been coming to retreats, Cherie Westmoreland from Bowen Island, a Regina gal who's now on the West Coast. And this is called Christmas 2020. Perhaps it's the heart aching and reaching out, but virtually, as a Christmas lockdown is needed. Hearts stretched out and in, caring for the stranger, deeply missing familiar loved ones. Hearts beating in us with love that is too contained. And yet, what might be happening? What is this longing? Perhaps during this time, we are like horses in the starting gate. For the first time, maybe, seeing the insistent love in our hearts that just longs to give itself to the world. Perhaps when the restrictions end, we will rush into each other's arms, knowing each other for the first time as the love that we are. May we meet this Christmas with gratitude, willingness, and hearts in the starting gate, ready to move the world. Let's just let the words settle for a moment. Dear friends, may each of our hearts know the gifts of the inner gifts. May each of us have the capacity to remember them and keep remembering so that we can offer our gifts to the world. May the stories of this time of year and the stories of our lives and the days of celebration help us to remember. And may the ripple of this remembrance, the ripple of this practice, reach out and be a cause and condition for peace and liberation and caring and connection with all beings everywhere. Thank you, friends, so much for your kind and beautiful presence, the gift of your presence.